Hello everyone, Ace here, and today let's talk about the latest news from Elon Musk. That being that he plans to get rid of the block button on X. An idea that has been very controversial to say the least on the platform, and it's not difficult to see why. I myself have some very mixed feelings about this idea, and while I'll probably end up being something of a contrarian, if only for being not as negative towards this idea as most people, I still think there are alternatives that Elon Musk should do instead. Though I do need to mention something that I don't believe anyone else is bringing up, and that being why this idea might even be considered in the first place. For what it's worth, you could at least in theory say that there are a few potential perks to getting rid of the block button, at least with regards to how it currently functions on X. First of all, and perhaps the most important, is the fact that currently when you get blocked by people on X, it does negatively impact your reach as far as the algorithm is concerned. Which is to say that because some random person decided to block you on X, that means that you also don't get to show up on the feeds of some other random people who likely have never even seen your work before, but would have and may have even liked your work had you not been blocked. All because the algorithm is made to reduce your reach when you get blocked. And this naturally is a problem that only gets worse when you realize the sort of echo chambers that exist on X, and that those echo chambers have a habit of using block lists. And that brings me to another potential perk in theory to doing what Elon Musk suggests here, which is to say that getting rid of the block button would be a massive blow to these echo chambers. Which, if your goal is to de-radicalize people online, is in theory an effective way to do that, because then the people in these echo chambers can't just simply plug their ears and pretend the opinions that they don't like simply do not exist. It would also stand to reason that bad takes on X in general are just simply going to be called out more often because of this as well. So those are two examples of how Elon Musk's decision has in theory some merit, but there is also a third I do need to bring up as well, that being that I have actively seen the block button be used by both trolls and stalkers to smear and spy on people on X without them even knowing it. This is because if a person doesn't like you, what they can do is block you and then start responding to your tweets on X, or begin quote tweeting you with all kinds of nasty smears, but because they blocked you, you can't actually see these. And if they decided to create a brand new account just to do that, then that only compounds the issue all that much further, because you'll likely not even realize it's happening in the first place, and will instead be completely blindsided by this. So the fact that the block button is in some cases actively utilized by harassers and stalkers towards their victims to hide their activities is another legitimate reason to say that the block button, at least as it is currently implemented, is bad. But let's also now talk about the justification for the block button and why it should exist. Now, a lot of people are bringing up the issue of bots, harassers, stalkers, and etc. to justify the block button and say that the mute button is not enough. That, however, I would say is not quite the justification that most people seem to think it is. Let's be honest here, the block button is very easily defeated because of how easy it is to simply create brand new accounts. And yes, creating brand new accounts to evade blocking is a violation of the rules, but if you're already botting, harassing, or stalking, then that doesn't really matter to you now, does it? And given how much of a problem that botting, doxing, and harassment are on X right now, that shows that the block button is simply ineffective with dealing with those issues. And it is more akin to putting a band-aid on a gushing artery wound. So the argument that most people seem to use in favor of the block button is, in all practicality, not a very good argument. What I would say, however, is a far stronger argument is that people should have the right to freedom of association, as in freedom to choose who they associate with. And if you value individual rights in any way, then this has to be of top concern, because the block button has been a key cornerstone in achieving exactly that. Having said that, I do need to bring up the matter of whether or not there are alternatives to the block button currently on X. And technically, to give Elon Musk some credit here once again, there are, such as being able to set your tweets to private or limiting who can reply reply. However, those alternatives do come with some very notable drawbacks. And I'm not convinced a person should be punished just because they have someone who's been harassing them, and I do mean actual legitimate harassment, such as doxing, for example. They don't want that person to be providing their home address every single time they tweet. Now granted, you could just report the person doxing you for very obvious reasons, but at the end of the day, accounts being as easy as they are to create, that doesn't really have much of an impact on its own, at least until the actual authorities themselves get involved in the matter. And given the general ineffectiveness that the authorities have had on this matter, assuming that you aren't an elected official or something, this is a problem that would unfortunately persist regardless. However, even with all of that in mind, the negative impact that Elon Musk's decision would have on the freedom of association that people have on the platform is enough for me to very much not like this idea. I will ultimately say, though, that the block button absolutely does need to be reformed. Personally, I think that the block button should only prevent a person from replying to your tweets. It should not negatively impact people on the algorithm, and with the fact that trolls and stalkers are actively using the block button on their victims to hide their activities, I don't even really believe that a person who is blocked should be unable to see the tweets from the person who blocked them, as someone who is stalking you will most likely just create a brand new account, and with the way things are right now, the victim would have to create their own brand new account just to check and see if their own stalker isn't still responding or something. So all that we end up with is more work for the victim to make sure they're not being victimized. So ultimately, those are my thoughts with regards to Elon Musk's decision to get rid of the block button, as well as what I think should be done instead. I'll of course be curious to see what you guys have to think in the comments below, and I'll of course continue to keep my ear to the ground and keep you all informed should any more news come. But in any case, this has been Ace. Hope to see you guys again soon. Take care. Ace out.